Welcome back to the Power Hour. Ladies and gentlemen, this is one of those guests that you just can't miss, and we're very excited to have her on. Again, the last interview we did with Deborah Tavares from StopTheCrime.net pretty much went viral. The video went great. Catherine did a great job with the documents. I think this interview is going to have potential to go even with more impact. Let me give a little background before we let Deborah run with this. Here's what we know. So, Northern California, the Butte area, Paradise was a city that it was centered on. You're seeing fires everywhere. You're seeing people that have died. You're seeing testimony of that there were much more deaths than were reported. You're seeing PG&E, that is Rothschild-owned, was at the center and involved somehow in this. You're seeing houses that burn totally abnormally, cars burn totally abnormally. Smart meters seem to have been involved. The fires were a house-to-house ignition. There were trees between them that weren't burned at all. And Paradise is also gold country. That's what we know. We know that a documentary with Opie from Ron Howard. Ron Howard is planning a documentary in the area, and I bet you none of those things will be mentioned. It is very suspicious. There is circumstantial evidence around it, around Agenda 21, around the herding of people into megacities, taking people off the land. That is extreme circumstantial evidence of some kind of orchestrated plan. The whole thing, you can call conspiracy theory, you can call whatever word you want. It is extremely suspicious, and there's certainly evidence that the story that we are being told is not true. At the heart of it is this woman, Deborah Tavares, who is an absolute hero. She doesn't like for me to say that, but I'm going to say it anyway. She is standing really in the face. Think about if what she's saying is true and her standing up, what that means, and the flack she is getting and the weight of the world that is on her. We appreciate her so much. We want to hear more of what's going on. Deborah Tavares, StopTheCrime.net. Welcome back to the Power Hour.
Well, Daniel, thank you so much for having me back on. Since last speaking with you, we have gone up to Butte County, to Paradise and some of the surrounding areas that were burned as well. And we've gone up with several ex-fire captains that between the two of them have 60 years of strike team fire experience. They also one of them was fighting here in the Tubbs fire in Northern California during October of 2017 and has since retired. He saw firsthand the intentional use of weapons systems and the primary focus on safety for the firefighters. A new method of firefighting is safety, of course, for the firefighters, evacuation, and clear the area, because they're not equipped at all to fight fires as they have been in the past. In fact, I want to say this now. We were filming a meeting here in Santa Rosa just after the Carr fire up in Redding. And the sheriff and other agencies were reporting on those firefighting efforts. And we were told by the sheriff that it was difficult to fight and literally arrive at that firefighting effort in the air because of all the drones that were flying over Redding at that time. And I asked in front of a group of a couple hundred people, why didn't you clear the drones out of the way? I mean, shoot them down if they were in the way of firefighting efforts. And he said, in front of all the people, we needed to first confirm what agency they were with. So I will leave that up to everybody as we roll in to what we observed in the town of Paradise. We saw, in fact, that the smart meters were involved. It was a house-to-house ignition. We know, and the firefighters observed, that the trees resisted the fires, which everyone can see from the overhead aerial photography, that the tops of the trees are still green. And we actually have on film in a predominantly destroyed school up in the town of Paradise, in a meter cabinet that was not singed on the exterior at all, was a blown-up smart meter inside. Now, on my other website, which I don't talk about that much because I don't post on it regularly, is smartmetersmurder.com. Everyone will find a link to smart meter fires throughout the many years of deployment history, including a number of Pacific Gas and Electric whistleblowers that were telling us years ago that Pacific Gas and Electric knew the smart meters were causing fires, and they are. They're pulsed, and they can cause brownouts in our homes, and they can take down our appliances. Anytime you have an appliance that has been destroyed or isn't functioning right, you have to suspect the smart meter if it's on your home. So I will say one thing right now for everyone that can: opt out of the smart meters as soon as possible. We have observed that in the fire areas, many of the homes that managed to survive did not have smart meters. Now, I can't say that completely, but we have made that observation. You must understand, we are in an active criminal crime scene, and the perpetrators are determining the cause. So we are up there with investigators, and other people are up there with investigation work being done as well to determine the facts around this. But I want to, and it's important to understand that, of course, we know the capabilities of the weapons systems. We've been told about this for many, many years, and there are many documents that talk about that. And we have the Senate report that Krasinich put forth years ago that talked about the cease and desist hopeful plan, that they wouldn't use space-based weapons and weapon systems that would cause fires. So it is just really important to understand the enormity of what we face here and the amount of work that's going into covering all of this. I'm just going to jump around a little bit here, Daniel.
Yeah, Deborah, before you do, let me interject here. Let me summarize what you said before, because I don't want to gloss it. Let me summarize, and then you tell me where I'm right, wrong, whatever. You're saying you went up to Paradise, which is kind of the epicenter of the fires in California. You went with fire chiefs, experts, many decades, several decades experience between them. What you saw was that a new method of firefighting was being employed because these fires were unlike basically anything they had experienced. You looked at some of the houses. The houses were very unusual the way they were burning. The trees were not burned between them a lot of times. They were still green. I even saw one picture of the grass was still green, and the houses were basically burnt to dust. You're seeing complete evidence. Without question, you saw evidence of smart meters being somehow involved here, smart meters either being blown up, no other way to look at it than the smart meters. The fires were of unusual characteristics, and you have seen been able to come to the conclusion that this is not typical, something outside the ordinary from your experience, from these firefighters' experience. This is what we know. This is what you just told us.
That's exactly what I just said, and we're still working on this, and I know that I will be able to present more information as we work through this. We're being hit with a myriad of a variety of topics to cover regarding the fires here in Northern California, as you can only imagine. And I want to say this, that on the front lines, we went to displaced campfire victims, areas where they are housing them. And when you go into the Chico area, which is adjacent to Butte County, where the fire struck, you see families living in tents with their children wandering around, sneezing in muddy fields. And you realize the priority right now is to get these people fed and housed. And this is right now the most overwhelming task, is to get these people out of the cold and the rain. So we observed a number of areas where the fire refugees were cordoned off because of norovirus, N-O-R-O virus. Those are flu-like symptoms. Actually, the norovirus is now making a comeback throughout the United States. You can't treat it with anything. It's usually a 1 to 3 day infection rate, depending on someone's immune system. But they are flu-like symptoms, and the symptoms correlate with what the frequencies do when we are overexposed to frequencies. And so for those of you that are listening, please print off the microwave radiation frequency and Wi-Fi symptom list that we have on stopthecrime.net, we were seeing people wandering around not only in shock, of course in shock, they've lost everything, escaping those fires, exactly like the escapees were here in the Santa Rosa area just 1 year ago, with the flames literally lapping at their heels. We're going to be posting more interviews of what it was like to escape that morning of the fires on November the 8th of 2018. But I've got to cover a few things that are extremely important right
now. There's the music. Hold that thought. Hold the thought, Deborah. There's the music on the other side. We'll get to it. Ladies and gentlemen, Deborah's been talking about this for years, and she said this is exactly what's going to happen, and yet here it is. How'd she know that? It's not a coincidence. We're talking to Deborah Tavares from stopthecrime.net, and it's developing, like she says, an active crime scene and being evaluated by the perpetrators. That's what she always says. Very interesting. Deborah, before we're going to get deeper into this, and I know you have really groundbreaking stuff to discuss. From somebody who is not there, and all over the country we hear rumors, we hear this. Tell us a little bit about Paradise, what you see. Is there military there? Is there city government? What do you see? Are areas cordoned off? What?
Yes, okay. On the first day that we arrived, we saw tremendous government presence there. It was literally seized by government from all different levels. We saw Cal OES, that's the Office of Emergency Services there. They actually arrived the day of the fires, which was curious to all of us. The day of the fires, they were there.
Yes.
There was National Guard in great numbers. There was Army, FEMA, Red Cross, Pacific Gas and Electric, a.k.a. Rothschild, in mass. Hundreds and hundreds of PG&E trucks, new trucks, and hundreds of other agencies with equipment, predominantly a lot of tree removal equipment. There's been a real concern over the extreme logging that is taking place there now in trees that do not look like they were burned. And we also observed replacement of many, many miles of guardrail along the main access road up in to Paradise. And what the firefighters observed about the replacement of the guardrails and were curious is that the guardrails were originally supported by those short, stocky, probably 8x8 wooden posts, and roughly the size, I guess, of that. And the posts burned, but yet the low grasses around the area of the post were not singed at all. And so what their assessment is that the metal guardrails heated up and the lag bolts that went into the metal or into the wooden post caused the post to burn and ignite, and they caught on fire. And the guardrails in many areas were literally lying on the ground, and the agencies were there replacing all of those burned out wooden posts with metal posts and new guardrail. Now, it was horrific. We went into some of the camps. There was massive registration requirement going on. We weren't able to get into some of the camps. They were literally preventing people from talking to a lot of these survivors. However, we do have a number of first-hand survival accounts that we will have up on stopthecrime.net. Be patient with us. We're rolling in so much information right now. We just can't post things fast enough. But I want to say that it was diabolical. At this moment, about 85% of the town of Paradise is gone. What now has occurred is that the city council, all their homes are lost. They don't have a city at this point. The banks are closed currently at this point. There was an East-West bank that was actually burned down a year ago, and recently, as of a few days ago, their temporary trailer was noted that their backup generator that served their temporary trailer was burned up, but the trailer was still in place. So the town is pretty much gone. We saw a number of houses. We were witnessing some survivors able to return to some areas. Many of the areas were cordoned off, and we were told because of removal of power lines that were lying across the road and the dangers of trees that have been compromised, we weren't able to access. Actually, those were the areas where we saw most of the burned up cars with the bodies in them. So there is a real concern, certainly, that the reporting of death is not as it really is. But again, as I say, this is an active crime scene. So I want to say a few things. I have quite a bit of breaking news, but before I do some of that, and because people will need to understand why and how all of this can happen, because what you're going to hear me discuss is just really so over the top that unless you clearly understand the mechanisms behind this, you won't understand the enormity of what we're all facing, and you won't be able to hear my words. And I want you all to hear my words. And this is what we have. Our government is a network of corporations, and these corporations have policies that have been designed to determine the minimum and optimal levels of destruction of life, of property, and all natural resources. And all of these goals have been incrementally advanced as to not create a crisis in public confidence. So the majority of people in all of our offices and city governments and in these corporate agencies and they represent human compromise. Either they're under complete mind control, MK Ultra mind control, they're blackmailed, or they are certainly advantaging with massive amounts of payoffs, greed, and lust for power. So this is human compromise and mind control, and we are not in a position now of any longer feeling that we have elected officials representing us. We do not. So I want to just go into a little bit, and this will be a continued story that we'll expound upon. But what we're now finding and hearing and seeing is that millions of dollars are pouring in to the wildfire relief in the Camp Fire area. And it's important to note that they also have a fire-resilient beer, BEER. There are many now soda companies that are getting on board with this resiliency. Understand, when you type in resilient cities, you find Rockefeller and Rothschild. So what we have is funding back into a mechanism that were the perpetrators of these crimes and asking for donations from all of us to fund the very consequences of the death and destruction that was intentionally created. So let me just talk about the donations for a moment or two, because we saw this occur in Santa Rosa here in Sonoma County. And understand, a year after the fires here in Sonoma County, there was a release of a movie, and it was called Urban Inferno, The Night Santa Rosa Burned. We were told that all of the proceeds from this film were going to be donated to the Sonoma County Community Resilience Fund. Again, that's Rothschild and Rockefeller. And these go to agencies that have already been set up and already existed in the community. So let's talk about that. We've done some investigation now already up in Butte County and in Chico about the collections of these funds. And it's the same story there as what occurred here in Santa Rosa. They're telling everybody that 100% of your donation will stay local, and that we will be making decisions as needs arise over the next year or more. Now, I can tell you these people have immediate needs. They can't wait for a year, and the funds that are being collected need to get to them. So here's what we were told when our research team asked some of the local companies, do the monies go to the individual? And they were told no. They were told no. They do not go to the individuals. They go into nonprofit charity organizations that distribute the monies to the community. And again, they don't go directly
Deborah.
to the survivors. And we'll continue on the other side.
We're at the break. We'll continue on the other side. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. If for some reason, you live far away from this, you haven't touched it, you haven't looked at it, this is something to look for, ladies and gentlemen. For years, for decades, really, we've been hearing about Agenda 21. Oh, what does that mean? It seems so distant, it doesn't bother me. Now we're seeing the physical manifestation of plans, and this is what the overlay here is so circumstantially overwhelming that it can't help but be related to some degree. We're talking to Deborah Tavares from StopTheCrime.net. She's talking about Paradise and the donations, and I know she wants to spend a little time on that and then go forward from there. Deborah.
Yes, thank you. It's important to understand donations are pouring in. That's not a bad thing. What we have to watch for is where is the money going? And how is it being used, and is it getting to the victims? And we're being told it's not being distributed directly to the fire victims by some of the areas that are collecting the funds. So millions have already come in, and there have been many beers. Over 1,000 different breweries throughout the country are donating to this, turning their profits into campfire donations. But some of the donations are huge. And, again, that's not a bad thing necessarily. But, for example, the Oakland Raiders gave $200,000 in cash plus $50,000 in gift cards. J.P. Morgan and Chase wrote a check for $725,000. The Walmart Foundation committed cash and product donations of $500,000, and another $10,000 for local wildfire services. There are a number of donations that are large donations, and again, not a bad thing. But what we need to understand is where is the money going, and that is what we discovered when we had the fires here in Northern California in October of 2017. The monies weren't necessarily going to the victims. In fact, we have talked to many victims who were even unaware of some of the charity and some of the organizations that were presumably distributing the money. They never found out about it at the time. So, again, we'll be updating on that, but I have some other very important news, and I'm going to be segueing into the CAL FIRE Burnham Up list of the cities that are now in California that are in a very high fire severity zone. But before I do that, I've got to put this word of caution out. I hope you all spread this far and wide. It's something we've recently discovered, and it is enormous. We have to understand and be aware of a fire-causing green energy code. Again, we're all being told we have to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and CO2, and there are new building codes called green energy codes that are now coming in. And it's important to understand that we have discovered that the low-E energy-efficient windows with the argon gas cause fires. And this is backed by the Department of Energy. I'm going to go into this a little bit because all of you need to hear this, because we have many areas throughout the country that have been hit by various types of weather weapon systems. There will be many homes rebuilt, and many people will be unaware that these low-E energy-efficient windows will cause fires. Now, here's how this happens, and I've actually had first-hand experience with knowing this to be the case. And here's how this works. The energy-efficient low-E windows cause fires. Sunlight reflected from the metallic oxide coating on the glazing surface is designed to keep the sun's heat from entering the home. The reflected heat has melted vinyl siding on neighbors' houses, ignited dry brush and mulch on the ground, and set cars on fire. The reflected heat is magnified from the outside glass pane, which causes the pane to become concaved rather than flat. This concaved condition occurs when the argon gas between the glass leaks out. The argon molecules are smaller than the molecules of the outside air, so the air does not leak in to replace the argon, creating a low-pressure area. The outside atmospheric pressure forces the glass pane inward, creating the concaved condition and a focusing effect of the heat. The sunlight heat is focused much like a magnifying glass. And at the right point of distance, you get ignition. It becomes combustible. And again, this is backed by the Department of Energy. And it's important to note that right now, approximately 80% of current window replacement and new home construction is using these low-E fire-causing windows. There is no recall. These windows remain spec'd in the new green energy codes. In order to comply with the required reduced energy codes, you do not need to use these fire-causing windows. That's the important point here, to reduce your heat and energy cost. They're being sold because they do reduce heat and energy cost, but they are starting fires. And firsthand is a family that lost their homes here a year ago in the fire here in Santa Rosa, relocated to a newly built home, and just prior to Thanksgiving, they smelled smoke. And at first, they didn't understand why the unoccupied model home next to the home they were living in, the mulch in the backyard had caught on fire. It was already igniting the wooden fence in the rear and climbing up wooden support deck posts in the back. The wife was home alone at the time and started screaming and called for fire. And neighbors came and they used garden hoses to try to contain the fire. By the time the fire company arrived, the fire had entered in under the deck into the crawl space under the home. The fire company had to pull off the wood siding and put the fire out. Well, no one understood at the time how this fire occurred. And it was after the builder of the home cleared off all the burned material and took off all the burned mulch. They had jute netting lying over the soil where the mulch had burned, and they were noticing black round holes that were burned in the netting, this jute netting like a rope. And that's when they discovered it was the reflection from the low-E windows on the south side exposure of these homes that had the most sun during the hottest times of the day. So this has not been recalled. It is being spec'd out by the Department of Energy. And most importantly, you now know about this. Share this far and wide. You do not need to install these low-E fire-causing windows. They are dangerous, and this has been reported. When I simply did a simple search, low-E windows cause fires, I saw reports from all over the country. I invite you to do the same. So now I'm going to get into some advisories that some of our cities are posting. This is out of Santa Barbara, California, that experienced fires and massive mudslides which killed people on both sides of those events. And this is just right now out of Santa Barbara. This is unbelievable because many of you by now understand that this is not climate change. This is climate control. And I refer to the 1960 CIA document for climate control and understanding there are many other weapons systems that have been used over the many years that have patents, etc. But in this storm readiness alert page, this is what they're now warning us. They're saying, if at any time you feel unsafe, take immediate action and do not wait for a notification to evacuate from your home. Ready, alert, beware. Weather advisory, and they talk about how the County of Santa Barbara of Emergency Management will be alerting the county for upcoming storms. And then they say set, ready, set, go. That's the mantra here now. The set part says prepare to leave, evacuation warning. Santa Barbara Sheriff's Office is warning that when there is a high probability of an evacuation due to incoming storms with durations intensifying to pose risk to life and property, you must prepare to leave. Then there is the go, leave now order. It's the evacuation order. And they're saying that in Santa Barbara. Now, this is going to become the acronym across the country for all of the weaponized weather events. That's why I'm telling you about this now. You will see this because what we see are templates. They're just using different county names. It's the same template. So in Santa Barbara, the sheriff's office will order you to leave if you are in a designated evacuation area. But they're saying they will not require that you evacuate, but that should a problem arise, no one will be able to help you. So now I want to talk about what we have now discovered here in Northern California with regards to the plans of evacuation, because we have Pacific Gas and Electric again, which is Rothschild, who is working with the county here to draft plans for planned power outages. In other words, when we have a red flag fire warning, Pacific Gas and Electric will be turning off the power to our homes. Now, I want all of you to keep in mind, we are on the smart meter grid system where everything is remote and everything can be turned off if you are on and have a electric smart meter. Also, the same thing now applies to the wireless water meters. By and large, they have been deployed throughout our country already. Check that out in your neighborhood as well. But here's the plans that they're talking about drafting in our area. These will come to you as well. And they talk about how agencies are trying to coordinate with Pacific Gas and Electric when they shut off the power to prevent fires. Now, keeping in mind, when power is shut off and you're in a unsustainable wildlands location outside of the city growth boundary, you will not have water unless you have ways in which to access water from your well or from your holding tanks. So any solutions that I can give you, if you're out in the country, you need to get larger holding tanks for water. You need to have ways in which to pull that water out of your holding tanks for firefighting ability. But they say in here that, ironically, by trying to prevent one disaster, turning the power off creates another disaster. They go among the concerns, power cuts limit the ability of agencies to issue alerts to residents using the Internet or wireless data, and it interrupts traffic signals, water pumps, and listen to this. It interrupts the traffic signals, the water pumps, wastewater treatment facilities. That's a big one, and impacts those who depend on certain types of medical equipment according to the county's plan. And they go on how PG&E will attempt to contact public safety agencies and local governments about shutdowns before they notify the customers. So we have to understand what is occurring here. We're being shut down when we need access to services the most. And we can certainly understand PG&E's position with their belief.
This is big. If you feel overwhelmed, if you feel the bigness of this, you're not alone. I certainly feel that, and I know Deborah feels the weight of the task. Basically what she said is, you correct me if I'm wrong, Deborah, leading up to this, is that there are already lists planned of high fire risk areas. That means burn them up lists. That's what you've said. That it basically following the same plan that you've been warning us about for years, that there's going to be a systematic plan to drive people off different parts of our lands. Resiliency, Agenda 21. When these fires happen, the plan is already there to cut the power off. So now, not only are you in the middle of a fire, you probably won't be able to get water because there's no power to run a pump. Unless you got some hand pump or some kind of well like that, you're on your own. Wild, Wild West. Even worse than that, because now you have no electricity or no outside help whatsoever. In the middle of this, where is that going to leave you? What you have the target on your back. I mean, that's what I'm hearing when you're saying all this, Deborah, is that basically the target is now firmly implanted right in our backs, and California is the prime example of really the rest of the world.
Well, it absolutely is, and we are on our own, and what's even worse, we're under attack. So we're on our own and under attack with their trying to be the stealth maneuvering that this is Mother Nature and this is climate change, when in fact we all know that it is intentional climate destruction. But I want to talk about the CAL FIRE Burn 'em Up list of cities in the very high hazard fire severity zones in California, and I'm not kidding. This is posted on stopthecrime.net under our Hot Topics page, and I'm going to go over a scenario with everyone that's listening. You need to understand that we are now in the Internet of Things. that the smart electric grid, the smart water grid, even the components, the computer components that handle the sewer, urine, wastewater treatment plants are all hackable. So we are under massive cyber hacking, as well as directed energy weapons, drones, satellites, etc., and causing even ignition from the windows. You heard me tell you that. So what I want to tell you now is a direct experience that we had just last weekend. We drove up to Nevada City to a town in the area of Grass Valley, which is only about 75 miles or so from the town of Paradise in the area that just now burned. Now, when we were driving up there, it was very dry, millions and millions of dead standing trees, absolutely heavily chemtrailed. The altitude was a couple thousand feet. The electrosmog was palpable. You could feel the energy in the air of frequency. And when we arrived in this historic town, a gold mining town, we were walking through the streets, amazing buildings, even a theater where Mark Twain once spoke, and one of the original settlements of gold mining in California. And as we were walking, we observed smart meters on all the buildings, all the houses in the perimeter of the town, as well as in the sidewalks, all of the wireless water meters. And I can tell you, some people that joined us, none of us were able to sleep that night because the frequencies were unbearable. Now, many people will not recognize what unbearable means. That's why I keep recommending everyone download the symptoms list, because we're all suffering now. We're all suffering from various aspects of the frequency assault on our bodies, keeping in mind that every cell is a computer in our bodies, and we're being hacked. But I want to go over the sense and knowing this town was going to burn. And we came back, and then the following day in our local newspaper, this is what we read. Now, keeping in mind, the day before, we were up in Nevada City, California. It says, some in Nevada City County fear they could suffer the same fate as Paradise. Now, this is out of the Washington Post, and this was dated in our local newspaper on 12/16 of 2018, and we were in Nevada City on December the 14th and the 15th, and we felt it was going to burn up next. And then we have this article. The deadliest wildfire in California history was blazing not far from Nevada City, about 75 miles north, in the town of Paradise. And people there are talking about not being able to continue to live there because insurance rates are now getting ready to triple. But here is part of the story that you will not believe, and when we get back from the break, I'm going to read the unbelievable to you out of this article.
It is unbelievable. It's overwhelming. I mean, this is crazy, ladies and gentlemen. Whether you believe this or not, you better find out if it's true. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, this is big. And Deborah's going through this systematically and going to talk about some groundbreaking things here that you need to know about. I haven't plugged anything. You know about the Powerball. We need your purchases. That's why we're here at thepowermall.com, 877-817-9829. Buy from the good guys, will you? That's what allows us to get people like Deborah on here. Very important. 877-817-9829 if you'd like to call, or thepowermall.com. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you get a chance. I know a lot of people will see this video. We totally got wiped out by YouTube. We had to start a totally new, it's a sparse channel. So please subscribe to our channel as well as Deborah's, and allow us to connect with you that way. It's very important what we're doing here, and we feel an obligation to do it, as you know that Deborah does. So getting back to Deborah, Deborah, you wanted to pick up right where you left off, basically,
yes,
with the
absolutely.
Holocaust of these cities, these burn-up lists.
Right. So I want to read a little bit more of what was said in the newspaper. They go on to say that even before the wildfires destroyed the town of Paradise, CAL FIRE was sounding the alarm. The report cited climate change as a contributing factor. That's an important thing you heard me just say. Another government agency that is behind implementation of the false science of climate change when in fact it's weather weapons. It's important to remember this because something that I'm going to be breaking here in a few minutes is going to pertain to the link up of government agencies all supporting the false science of climate change rather than weather control. But this article goes on to say that the campfire advanced quickly into the town of Paradise, surrounding the communities, at times burning an area the equivalent of a football field per second. A football field per second. Many evacuees spent hours stuck in traffic as flames brushed their cars or burned them up. But about 1,300 California communities, accounting for 3 million housing units, have been classified invulnerable to major damage from wildfire in Nevada County, where some 100,000 residents are spread over 900 acres. So Nevada County is in a very high fire risk. We felt the levels of the environment and the heavy metals and the electrification and the ionizing in the atmosphere on top of all of the wireless combustible equipment, house-to-house ignition. So let me now jump into some of the CAL FIRE areas and what they're listing. We're talking about 1,300 California communities accounting for 3 million housing units. I want you to think about homelessness. Go to homelessness on that one. Also, we just heard a few days ago that there's a new license for new car purchases that will not allow people to cross over the Golden Gate Bridge or any bridge where there are tolls with new car plates. They will now roll off the lot with the ability to charge you for commuting. And that's because so many cars are burning up here. And they're going to continue to burn up. And here are some of the cities that they're talking about. And I'm not going to list them all. I'm just going to go over a few. But they're talking about, there are 5 cities here in Alameda County, which include Berkeley and Oakland, Pleasanton, San Leandro. They talk about Butte County, 2 cities, Chico and Paradise. Well, they already burned up Paradise. They talk about, I'm going to try to pick out names for those of you geographically that will understand where these locations are. South Lake Tahoe. Clear Lake here in Northern California has already burned several times over the last few years. In Los Angeles County, there are 39 cities listed. Beverly Hills, Burbank, Claremont, Covina, Diamond Bar, Glendale. I didn't list them all. And in Riverside County, there are 22 cities listed, and some of those cities are Desert Hot Springs, Hemet, Lake Elsinore, Palm Springs. Many of you know where Palm Springs is. That's listed on the Burn 'em Up list. San Bernardino, there are 15 cities listed, including Big Bear Lake, Fontana, Rancho Cucamonga, Redlands, Upland. San Diego, 13 cities listed there. There are many, many cities listed on all of these plans. Westlake Village, Whittier, Marin. We're talking about Marin County, which is just north of the Golden Gate Bridge. They're talking about Mill Valley. Mendocino County, there are a couple of cities listed. That Mendocino County is what we talked about originally in 2015 when we released that YouTube video, Plan to Burn Up Northern California. So I want to have all of you remember that. And I need to just quickly go over this because there are a number of things I want to get out. Napa County, Calistoga, that burned in the fires here of 2017. Yountville is in that area. Nevada City, okay, Grass Valley and Nevada City and Truckee. Now, I just talked to you about our touring of Nevada City and Grass Valley. It's on the burn-up list. Also, Orange County, Anaheim, Irvine, Laguna Beach, Mission Viejo, Newport Beach, Orange, They talk about Tustin, many other locations, Oceanside, San Diego, Vista, San Luis Obispo, several cities, 4 cities actually, San Mateo in California, 8 cities, Santa Barbara. Well, Santa Barbara, they listed Santa Barbara. That already did burn with mud and landslides that caused devastation. Santa Clara doesn't mean that they won't burn things a second or third time, by the way. We've been watching that as well. That's been happening. Shasta. Under Shasta, there are 3 cities listed. Redding is listed. Certainly with the Carr fire, Redding was burned as well. Again, Siskiyou County, here, 6 cities listed. Sonoma County, Cloverdale, and Santa Rosa. Santa Rosa already burned, but it's on this list. They continue with Ventura County. They talk about Simi Valley, Thousand Oaks, Ventura. Again, I have not named all of the cities that are planned to be under high risk. They call it VHFHESZ, and that means very high fire hazard severity zones. And many of these areas have already burned. So
Let me interject for 1 second here, especially somebody who doesn't live in California, which most of our audience doesn't. And you're listening, and you keep naming over these cities, and you talk about that this is weather modification. This isn't climate change. This is climate control. You mentioned to me earlier about the coast, the surf contest that had to be canceled. You talked to me about 5G going underground. I think those are important things to mention. This is so freaking big, Deb. I mean, this is so massive. If what you're saying is true, for the person who's listening, I mean, when you study this, what goes through your mind? I mean, you got to just be like out of your mind, pulling your hair out almost.
Well, I'm just anxious for everyone to hear what the documents are telling all of us, and the research that goes into being able to look and read these documents and then express these documents. So with that having been said, I want to talk about quickly that the 5G is going underground. And certainly one would think, and again, this is just an assessment that we've made. We have no documentation to substantiate this, but I can say that with all the planned fires and all of the flooding, securing the system underground would be a necessity. And because of all the wires overhead that have been destroyed in the fires. So I want everybody to think about that. Not that we know that that's why that's being done, but we do know that the 5G frequency grid is a kill grid, and so why not secure it from all of the weather weapons that are being used against all of us right now. We also understand that the FCC is run by Crown Castle, and they are the 5G beast. They are the Rothschilds out of the City of London, and I call it their frequency division for depopulation. And Crown Castle and Google are the FCC. And but I want to talk about the undergrounding because it's very important. The International Telecommunication Union estimates ongoing capital investments related to fiber infrastructure, which will reach a staggering $144.2 billion between 2014. Folks, they're already doing it, okay? They've been doing it. Between 2014 and 2019. And in its Trends in Telecommunication Reform of 2017 report, a huge explosion of data, especially video, flowing from tomorrow's 5G radios and base receivers and stations is the primary driver for the immense capital investment into fiber. Now, I pulled out some information from Crown Castle. I discovered that Jim Young on Crown Castle, one of the CEOs, is behind the fiber plans. And when we get back from this break, I'll read just a little bit of what he has to say about the fiber connection and the value of fiber. And then we're going to jump into something really, really big over the next decade and beyond. And they asked, it was asked of Crown Castle, are the tower and fiber operations separately run? And they responded by saying, Crown Castle is one company. We're all on the same team. But for operational efficiencies and effectiveness, we have a fiber line of business growing rapidly. So that's important to note, the new aspect of 5G and the fiber networks. And I wanted to now talk about something that we've just learned. This is a developing story. I'm going to do the best I can in articulating this to all of you. You know how over the years we've heard repeatedly that we have unfunded pension liabilities. That's become just an acronym. I think we've all pretty much accepted that our cities have unfundable pension obligations. Unfunded pension obligations mean there are no pensions. Let's say it correctly. If they're not funded, there isn't the money. So what happened? How is it that all of our cities and agencies have unfunded pension liabilities? Well, of course, we can state the obvious: theft, a political wheeling, etc. But let's talk about some other possibilities. And here's this one. And I did not discover this until our team was attending recently a mosquito and vector control meeting, wherein they were being presented with year-end financial statements. And that presentation opened up a new world of reality of what has occurred. We're talking about nationwide, every city, every agency, accounting fraud. Government firms are scamming all our communities and all our agencies. And this is what we have discovered. And this is only one firm, so I know that there are likely many. So I will refer to this because I said this is a developing story. And the organization is N as in Nellie, B as in boy, S as in Sam, gov.com. So it's important to know that the nbsgov.com website means that it is fully operational. It is a government website. It is a third-party accounting practices through the use of proprietary computer generic applications as approved by U.S. Inc. Accounting Practices Association. This is important, what you are hearing right now. We're a network of corporations. They are not working for us. And there are now proprietary computer generic applications of accounting in all of our city agencies. This is an economic hitman strike through false proprietary generic accounting, and appears to be in all cities, all municipalities, and all counties, all government agencies that have outside contracted services. Government agencies have handed over financial service control audits to a centralized monetary third party that does not have accountability. This is an economic hitman team's accounting principles that are misleading the future revenue and expense projections that are going to cause massive requirements for tax increases and bankruptcy in all of our cities. So I'm going to talk to you about how they've sold this, what they're saying, and I'm going to make a comment right now before I tell you a little more. I asked this accounting firm at the mosquito and vector control meeting, have you factored in climate change? Now, all of us again know that it is weather control. And I asked if they have factored in the tremendous economic loss that we're now suffering nationwide from targeted weaponized weather attacks. And I didn't say that, I just said climate change. There are no factoring in for the loss. Although the vector control locally here said that with the loss of housing in the Santa Rosa area, they're already losing $50,000 a year for vector control. And they're either going to need to increase taxes to cover services or decrease vector services. I also asked, with the increased heat events that we're being told will happen, and they are, this is all part of the weaponization of the climate, there will be new vectors And by cutting services, we will now face new vectors. Also, I will add this at this moment, too. There are many plans afoot right now to confiscate our water supplies, and we're seeing many agencies forming. And one of the aspects of that is creating wetlands next to existing water and tributary areas where they say there needs to be species ability to adapt. No, this is land confiscation under wetlands, under the word wetlands. Think wild lands, wetlands. Also think in terms of the mosquito and vector problems that are associated with standing water. This is a plan. Getting back to this developing story about the weaponized accounting systems now that have entangled themselves throughout our entire country on all levels. This is what they say to their clients. We have worked with hundreds of local government and public agencies of every type and size, from the smallest special purpose district to the largest of full-service cities. We also work with counties and parishes, municipalities, and education and school districts. Our ultimate goal is to make our clients look good in front of their constituents. I'm going to read that again. To make them look good in front of constituents, including constituents of citizens, property and business owners, boards, councils, attorneys, advisors, proponent groups, and other professionals. We have been taken by accounting fraudulent practices through USA Inc. in all of our cities, all government agencies throughout the entire country.
Oh, it's so big. Deborah, the time has gone way too fast. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's an absolute pleasure. Your research, who you are. God bless you, Deborah.
Everyone go to stopthecrime.net. Please sign on for our YouTube and email blast out.
Very good. Ladies and gentlemen, God bless you. Have a great holiday. ThePowerHour.com, stopthecrime.net. Check out our YouTube channels. Demand of Food. You want to get prepared. Demand of Food's on sale. Check that out. Demanda.com. God bless you. Talk to you soon.
Imagine a cold winter blowing outside, yet you are warm and cozy inside with economic, safe, comfortable heating thanks to your Sunair ductless furnace. The Sunair ductless furnace provides your home with comfortable, radiant electric heat that stays near the floor where you are, not on the ceiling where you aren't. It's simple to operate and the most energy-efficient furnace in the world, heating up to 500 square feet for about $1 a day. Sunair heaters and purifiers are made in America and built to last. To order, call the Power